With Genshin Impact refusing to let Scaramouche out of the basement, it's finally time to recap his full story with a new context of 3.1. Welcome to the full Scaramouche recap, where I will be compiling his full lore for your easy perusal in the event you are both new or just want Scaramouche history. Let's begin with an overview. Scaramouche, the Balladeer, is also known as the 6th Fatui Harbinger and Kunikuzushi. He is the prototype vessel of the Electro Archon and currently under 500 years old, making him one of the younger non-human immortals we've seen so far. Probably only older than Albedo given they were created around the same time. He doesn't have a vision as far as we can tell at the moment, and he is known canonically as the Moses-like Harbinger due to his unruly mouth. Scaramouche's tale follows the rules of 3, as mentioned in his artifact set of the Husk of Opulent Dreams. Plays and theater tend to follow a 3-act structure, so let's abide by that as well. We'll discuss his story in this order: the nameless wandering eccentric, Scaramouche the Balladeer, and Kunikuzushi, the vagrant of Inazuma. Also, apologies for my voice, I'm kinda sick at the moment. The nameless eccentric's story doesn't start with his own, but rather in the death of the Electro Archon Baal during the Cataclysm. Wrecked by grief, but nevertheless determined to uphold her role, Baal's twin Beelzebul began a project using what Yaimiko can only refer to as lost art and technology, to create a puppet. The purpose of this project was canonically to store the Gnosis. However, theories would soon spread that the project was made to immortalize a fraction of Makoto's identity. Regardless of motivation, the doll was created. The doll was never meant to completely be the vessel, as stated by Yaimiko. The doll was simply a prototype to test the plausibility of this project. The doll would be created with the short nails frame, with features that resemble, but not mimic, his Archons. Despite Yaimiko's warnings and worries that this thing would eventually become a disaster, the doll was given the Gnosis. However, when the Gnosis was given, he shed tears, and thus was the consensus of the project. The doll was too fragile, whether it be as a human or a tool. But his creator would not destroy him, feeling that she owed him something, a kinship perhaps that formed throughout their short time together. So the god would leave him slumbering, and take him to the Shikai Pavilion, believing that she does not want to assert control over him, that he is free to spend his days as he wishes. The doll would soon rise from his slumber an indefinite amount of time later, disheartened by the fact that he was abandoned by his creator. He was a transcendent being, divinely created, but he was cast aside like worthless straws. Yet, due to an error that cannot be known, he roused himself from slumber and began to wander the mortal realm. This is where he would meet several strange men mining away in the caves of Tatarasuna, and a kind young deputy he would soon come to know as Katsuragi. Katsuragi discovered the nameless eccentric while patrolling Natsuji Beach, and would soon teach him the ways of smithing. The two would grow to be quite close friends, so much so that the eccentric would deem Katsuragi and the men as family, so much so that the nameless eccentric would perform sword dances with them. But this is where the story takes a strange yet fascinating turn. This is where I break the boundaries of lore and speculation for a bit to try and fill in the blanks for everyone. The beauty of Genshin's lore is the presence of an unreliable narrator. The nameless eccentric claims that the human in the cutscene saw him as an abomination. However, the lore would suggest otherwise. Katsuragi warned him not to show his true nature. Additionally, Katsuragi knew that the nameless eccentric was connected to the almighty Shogun herself. What I theorize and speculate is that the eccentric, as an unreliable narrator, saw this incident as a moment of Katsuragi being ashamed of him as a friend, when in reality, Katsuragi could be protecting him for the sake of secrecy, because that is a really smart move, as we would further see along in the eccentric's life. And this is where we continue with Katsuragi's execution under the hands of Mikoshi Nagamasa, the upright inspector. Katsuragi was condemned of a misconduct that is currently unknown in the lore. However, the rather aged notes in Tatarasuna suggested it had something to do with the nameless eccentric. Most likely, Nagamasa found out that the eccentric was a divine creature and grew either afraid or aggravated by it. According to the Husk of Opulent Dreams, this is what he told the eccentric. This gold ornament may be a proof of identity granted by the almighty Shogun, but you are neither man nor mechanism, and so I can only deal with you in this fashion. Do not hold this against me. The wanderer who has left yesterday in the dust no longer thinks about it, but when he covers his ears, he can still hear the wild winds that roared that year. Regardless, the eccentric pressed on. he continued to wander, lost and alone. This is where he met a pair of expectant eyes looking up at him. This gold ornament is a proof of identity granted by the almighty Shogun. It must surely be able to save the people. A young boy from Tatarasuna afflicted with a Tataragami. The eccentric called this child a hope for the future, much like himself. "Where are you going, wanderer?" The roving youth was stopped by a child's shout. That was a child of a Tatarasuna craftsperson, and while he was ill, his eyes were still clear. The youth told the child that he was bound for Inazuma City. "But it's raining really hard right now. They say that the people who left haven't returned." The youth opened and closed his mouth a few times, but at last could only give the child a small smile. The next time he set foot upon the island, that child was nowhere to be seen. The wandering eccentric traveled, watching the people of this land and the many different hearts that existed. He observed many a heart, good ones, upright ones, strong ones, gentle ones. So what happened was that the puppet too desired a heart. And this is when the man in a coat and the folks with masks would soon find him. Potentially Il Dottore, or perhaps another Harbinger altogether. The nameless eccentric would be sent to Snezhnaya on a boat, and he would soon come to understand his full potential. The researchers would experiment on him, poke wires and threads to see just how he ticks. They would unlock the doll's electro abilities, and even more, they'd give him more than what his original creator did. They would give him a heart. But it was not the heart that he desired. It was but a mere prop for lies and deception, for it did not contain any blessings. It was instead a sacrifice brimming with selfishness, hypocrisy, cunning, and curses, all wrapped in an amiable husk. Good and evil were the song of sentient life, useless and cacophonous. But if he were to wrench this heart out, he would no longer be able to feel anything at all. Thus was the birth of the Balladeer, the sixth Fatui Harbinger. Scaramouche was a formidable Harbinger, known for his deceitful and cruel nature. Unlike his other colleagues that expressed a necessity to their violence, whether it be for profit, progress, or science, Scaramouche's motivations were nothing more than sheer entertainment, curiosity, and boredom. A truly chaotic creature. He once slapped a man out of sheer interest for what face he would make. He would happily lie and flatter if it means getting what he wants. And he isn't afraid to berate and chastise everyone he deems beneath him. For neither mortal nor God, nor fate itself, is qualified to be his judge. He is free to choose how he wishes to spend the remainder of his days. However, he also considered the consequences of the heart given to him by the strange researcher. Emotions, as he called them. On one hand, he loathed the idea of human emotion and dare called them human filth. But on the other hand, he is afraid of losing that thrill of feeling. Human emotions were entertaining, after all. It was also during this time frame that he would name himself Kunikuzushi. In Inazuma's traditional theater, there is a certain character known as Kunikuzushi. Such characters are often schemers and usurpers of nations. At the end of his wanderings, he chose this name as an act of his own will. And as for the name that he had once used, even he no longer remembered it. The Balladeer would be involved in 3 major events that were named in current archives. First is an incident within Mondstadt, perhaps as a noble diplomat. The second was an incident with the Kaidahara and Kamisato clan. For historical context, there were, once upon a time, 5 branches of the Raiden Gokuden, powerful smithing arts of Inazuma. But today, only Amenema still retains its line of succession, while the Ishin art can just barely be said to have extant descendants. In the eyes of the people, this is just the natural result of the ravages of time. They never once suspected that such sudden falls from grace might have some hidden mystery behind them. The other smithing arts were purged into oblivion by several bouts of murder and extinction, and such a fate would soon befall the Ishin art. The Kaidahara clan, known smithers and practitioners, was accused of tampering with the blueprints of an important weapon, and unfortunately, they had an incident with the true perpetrator, Kunikuzushi. It was unknown why the Harbinger stopped his attacks during the time, but there were 2 instances stating that, Either Scaramouche simply got bored, as he claimed in the Husk of Opulent Dreams that it was all just a little experiment into human nature, or it was because of a family, or a person, named Niwa. Currently, it is unknown whether both are true, or simply one of them is. The third incident was his first encounter with the Traveler, and the incident with the fake sky. The Balladeer would be sent to Liyue to investigate the incident with the meteors, and along the way, he would soon find the truth of the world, that the stars in the sky were merely hoaxes, a lie. This encounter would not end with the direct confrontation from the Traveler, instead the Balladeer walking away with this newfound knowledge. But his final and most egregious act was against the people of Inazuma. The Fatui would plot the Vision Hunt decree by playing both sides of the same coin. They would construct a promise to the Electro Archon and hold the entirety of Inazuma in a cage. The Balladeer would be situated in Yashiori Island to facilitate the production and distribution of delusions. This was in hopes of creating a black market for the Fatui's plot, as well as to fan the flames of the war. His plans were only stopped not by an external force, but rather by himself. With the intervention of Yae Miko, the Shrine Maiden offered a trade. He allows the Traveler to live, and she will give him the Gnosis he so desires. Driven by a new ambition, a new purpose to understand the very reason of his creation, he defected from the Fatui and fled with the Gnosis. Kunikuzushi tried to understand the Gnosis, to conquer the divine gaze, but then he is met with this unsettling premonition. What he saw in his dream was a phantom dancing to the music under the moonlight, just like the young man in the distant past, who was akin to a blank sheet of paper, and like a pure yet fragile persona, emerging once the resentment and suffering had dissipated. The Wanderer did not know that he had any faculties for dreaming, thinking that this must have been the researcher's little trick, or perhaps it was the infinitesimal resistance of that bygone heart. You once acquire the heart that you always dreamed of, but it was but a mere prop for lies and deception. Now you will finally obtain what belongs to you, and this false construct of a body can at last aspire to power over this world. Yet, this is all but a fleeting dream of glory, and it will all one day drift away amidst the sighs of a suffering earth. Was it a him from the past who had said this, or him from the future? The vagrant cared not, for when he awakened, it was not he, but that ethereal future that dissipated. His tale, however, is far from over. Somehow, some way, along the journey, he meets his old colleague once more. He is in the hands of the Fatui, serving as nothing more than a grand puppet. How he got here is a mystery, and if he went willingly is unknown. This is where Kunikusushi's story continues. In its due time, we wait for 3.2 and see what answers lie ahead for us. But nevertheless, this has been a short compilation of all the Scaramouche lore we know so far. My name is Aster, and thank you for chilling with me.